pick up where we left off last week and then take that to Daniel. And anyway, so last week we talked about that we saw that Satan was tied to the first and second beast in Revelation chapter 13. We also looked at the meaning of the 7 heads that were on Satan and on the beast and the 10 horns and what those meant. And so, and then we jumped from Revelation 13 to Daniel, and we looked at it because that helps us to understand what those horns mean. So what did we find out last week? That the 10 horns on Satan, 10 horns on the first beast or the Antichrist, and we see that in a couple other places. What did we find out those 10 horns represent?
Kingdoms.
Yep. The 10 horns represent kingdoms, and we will get into that review a little bit in just a little bit. And then we saw the 7 heads represented.
Not countries, but people that ruled the world.
Yes, exactly. People in history that ruled the world. And so then, I should be careful how I do this, but I want to do it different. Sorry. Okay, so do you remember? So it is any worldwide government throughout history. And let's look at Revelation 17, 9 through 11. Let's read that again. And then we didn't answer all of that basic story problem last week, okay? So we've got 10 horns. I'm going to do this while somebody reads that.
Here's the mind which is wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. And the beast, which was and is not, is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction.
Okay, we covered that to here. We didn't talk about the 8th part because we didn't read the verse that goes to that. So we're going to do that. But Jeremy said, these were worldwide kingdoms throughout history, okay? And do you remember who they are?
Assyria,
Yep.
Egypt, Babylon, Middle Persia, and the Greek. And then Rome.
So he said, the Medes and the Persians, and is that right? Okay, in the Greek? Okay, and what did he say in the verses? What did he say about
One
the
is-
5?
One is to come.
Okay, he said, what does he say about the 5?
Five have
Yeah, 5 have fallen. And this is recorded when? What's the time period of when these are looked at as fallen?
When Rome was in power.
Exactly. So, and he said, 1 is. And so Rome was in power, 1 is. And then he said, what? For the 7th.
Yet to come.
So 1 is yet to come. And we said this, and we're going to look at Daniel again a little bit. Who is that? How does
What
that?
is 4? Is that
You can't read my
Media
writing?
Persia.
Medes and the Persians.
Medes? Okay.
Okay. So we said
It had to be Roman Empire again.
yes. Okay. So we said we have Rome, but Rome has to come back. And the formation, that's where this ties into, right? So what did we find out about Rome coming back?
Temple has to be rebuilt.
It does have to be rebuilt, but what's the tie here with Rome?
It's going to be composed of 10 kings.
Yes. There's some changes that are gonna take place. And we looked at the fact that there's gonna be 10, but then there's gonna be some transitions in that leadership. But they all do one thing. And what is that one thing that they do?
Hand their power over.
Yeah, and that's from Revelation 17. So they give their power. They give their power to the beast or the Antichrist. Okay, so let's read. We didn't read this. We want to read Revelation 13, 3, 12, and 14. Okay, so let's read 3.
Chapter 3?
Chapter 13.
Ah,
The details.
I was just guessing.
Bad guess. Revelation.
And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast.
Okay, so we find out that when it comes to the beast, there's an event that takes place. Okay, and what's the event?
Is mortally wounded.
Mortally wounded. Okay, and then is it 12? Is that the next verse? Okay, so read 12.
Says it exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed.
Okay, so we see that same, and we're going to talk about, this is talking about the second beast. We're going to talk about that next week. But here, the reason we're reading this verse is because he says again, what does he say again?
Deadly wound. was
Yes.
healed.
Okay, and then what's how about 14?
Okay.
And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life.
Okay, so 3 times in this chapter, and we know who the second character is because we talked about that last week. And who's the second character? The he that those 12 and 14 are describing. Who's that second character?
Antichrist?
The first character is the Antichrist. The false prophet is the second character. And we know that because when we go to Revelation 19, we're told that. Here is just a second beast, okay? But we find out 3 times in this chapter that there was a mortal wound that was healed. Now there's a couple of options as far as interpreting, and one is the obvious one, which is what? What happens to the beast?
He
It's
dies
healed.
and comes back.
Yeah, he literally dies and comes back to life. Okay? So and that would also, when we said he is the Antichrist, the false Christ, and so that would also, what? What would the fact that he dies and comes back to life?
Imitating
Replace
Christ.
Yeah,
Christ.
another imitation of Christ. Now, some people don't think that Satan would have that kind of ability or power. So it would have to be something that God certainly allows.
So maybe maybe he doesn't bring it back to life. Maybe he just brings the body and makes, you know what I mean? It's like a dead body moving around.
Yeah, or there's something,
I
Maybe
think,
there's no death.
Yes.
We celebrate when people are healed from cancer all the time.
okay? But he says it's a mortal wound,
Yeah.
and he says it's from the sword, and he says, so it seems to imply
mirroring what happened
there,
to Christ.
yeah, so he either literally died, or
Could be deception. of
it
some
could be
kind.
deception. And people, it looks like that's what happened. So he literally died. It could be deception. There's one other option that people will interpret. And it's important to point this out. Thoughts? Ideas?
Well,
It never happened, it's all false.
Good try.
well, my Bible talks about how back in Exodus, how the Pharaoh's magicians duplicated Moses' sign, so it's,
True, all but one, I think, if I remember correctly. So that would probably come under this, the deception part. But what you're gonna find, just like here, okay, there's kings and kingdoms are used interchangeably as we read, okay? So sometimes you're talking about the kingdom, sometimes you're talking about the king. And so some people think what it's referring to is the kingdom. And what would be amazing about the kingdom, and so think about it, what would the kingdom be? Rome, okay, and the fact that Rome doesn't exist anymore.
And then it comes back to life
And
in
then-
7.
Yeah, and then Rome comes back to life. Okay, so
How does-
some
how
That
people,
makes sense.
How does Rome not exist?
because Rome doesn't exist in our time.
What do you mean?
World power.
As a world power?
As a world power,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, Rome's always been there.
But it's not existing as a world power right now.
Rome is just the city now,
Yes.
it's not a world
A
power.
territory in a
Right.
world like it was during that
Or maybe
time.
they're-
Roman
I
Empire.
was,
Yes,
I was
thank
gonna
you.
say something not very smart to say, but maybe they're not talking about, never mind, I'm gonna say that one.
What?
Not right
No,
here.
not gonna say it.
Okay, so Rome
probably
existed
thinking-
in
Yeah, well.
history. Rome existed in history. The fact that it's gonna come back in this sort of formation, because it never looked like that in history. You had is it East and West? I think that's the legs, the East and West, but it never had a 10-kingdom confederacy in history. So some people will say, well, it's the kingdom, and then some people wrestle with only looking at it as the kingdom, because look at the pronouns in 13:3. Excuse me, is it 3? Yes. What's the pronouns there?
He,
Yeah,
who,
It's a person.
his, it sounds like a
Yeah.
person, then look at 12.
Sounds like a person.
he, yeah.
Sounds like a person, it refers to the beast.
So maybe, yeah, maybe it's not really, yeah, you can see kingdoms, but maybe it's a group, you're saying a group of 10 kings or 10 rulers, and one of the rulers, he says his ruler, one of his heads, like one of his heads of state.
No, because here it says him. It applies it to the beast itself. It could be that this is true and this is true. One doesn't exclude the other. It could be that, yeah, because he's a representative of that kingdom as a king, that it could refer to that as well. But one of these two things is true. Either there's some deception and people really think that he died, or he literally, God enabled Satan, or God allowed him to be raised from the dead. And we don't know, but it does say he was mortally wounded.
But he could be using that pronoun, he, as a person, but he also refers to the bride or the woman, and that's Israel.
True, but what's your point? I'm missing your point.
Well, even though he's using this as a he, as if it was a human,
Uh-huh.
It
It
could
could
be
still
the
be-
kingdom
Oh, I see
of
what you're
Rome.
saying.
it could
Okay.
be a king,
Because
just
the
like
woman
the
is
woman
the-
was
yeah.
Israel.
I don't think one excludes the other,
Mhm.
but I think both could be true.
Well, we know the devil is deceiving us all the time,
Right,
so deception's involved no matter what.
Exactly.
Even if it was more.
exactly.
Yes,
We
And
know
it's
that.
totally in the atmosphere during this time period. And we won't have time to look this week at some of those references, but that's a good point too. Okay. So, how would, what's the answer on the 8th? Go back to 17. We got Rome, he's not yet to come, we've answered that. What's the answer on the 8th? Number 8.
Oh, 11,
And one of the 7.
The beast.
A new power that will be brought back from dead.
Huh?
What,
We put last week, a new power that will be brought back from dead.
You're not supposed to have that.
He said it's.
I'm a volunteer.
Okay,
I'm a volunteer.
please use that on me at once.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 8th is what? What did you say the 8th is?
A new power that will be brought back from the dead.
Okay, so we've got Rome or the Antichrist, and he could be the 8th because what? He could be the 8th because what? One of the 7 and an 8th.
Brought back.
Yeah, because he's brought back, exactly. An interesting thought, look, and
Well, I
again,
thought that was 7.
Yeah,
But it- that's
yet
brought
to
back.
come, so he's so
Yeah.
somehow timing wise, the Antichrist is still future in our time, so he's yet to come. So you've got the Antichrist in existence, but then he goes away, either
Well-
deceptively or he's killed.
It was 7's Rome coming back.
And then
it
he
can't be the
comes back
Antichrist.
again in
So he's
8.
gonna come back 3 times, so Rome, and then Rome.
Well,
Yeah.
he's yet to come. So Rome is coming, and or the future Antichrist is coming. If he's killed, then he's going to be, what is it? He's an 8th, because he's died and come back to life. So he's actually an 8th. That's what that's referring to, is that.
I need some whiteout.
Yeah.
You need some whiteout?
So,
Here you go.
I don't know.
You're right.
Doesn't work to him.
so
That's
if
too much
Rome
mathematization
comes
for
back
me.
as 7, as a world, what is it, a world power. Rome comes back as 7 as a world power. And then,
The Antichrist dies?
He
and
dies
the
and he comes
Antichrist
back.
maybe is leading Rome and dies. And
Yep.
then the Antichrist
So-
comes back.
Then it would be a different kingdom than Rome, it wouldn't be Rome.
No,
I don't think it would be
because
Rome.
because that's what, and we're look at Daniel again, because Daniel tells us that Rome has to come back. So,
But it
But
comes
yet it
back
said
in
7.
7.
yes, but, yes,
So it comes back
but,
in 7 as peace, it dies,
Well-
and then it comes back again as,
Yeah,
There
but
you
it's
go.
not
He's
Rome,
not peace.
it's not Rome, it's
Okay, that makes
Antichrist
sense.
replaces the kingdom, so the
Right,
yeah.
8th kingdom is Antichrist's kingdom, kinda like Christ's kingdom is gonna come.
true,
it's
but
not-
he is
it's not
tied,
Rome.
but yeah, he is tied to Rome because of this, we're told, and we're gonna go to Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, but Rome has to come back in this, structure. It's never been in that structure in history. So, this is also referring to that Rome is in existence and it's yet to come, but we can see that the Antichrist is tied to Rome, and because he dies then and comes back, he's an 8th.
Well, I mean,
That's just.
I can see the 10
counting it.
kingdoms, that being Rome. And then they give their power over to the Antichrist after he dies. So,
But he
I can
would
see
be,
that, the Antichrist replacing Rome.
yeah, and it could be,
You know what I
again, because kingdom and king sometimes are hard to pull apart. It's right to associate the king with the kingdom. It's right to do that. But
But-
what we're seeing is
But the
the
Antichrist will
final,
replace the kingdom. Like Rome is brought up, right? And then
But
there's yet to
he's-
come, and then the 10 that are controlling Rome,
but what
after
did
he
they
dies,
do?
hand the power to Antichrist.
But no, but what did they do? Look at chapter 17. And let's look at, verse 12. What do we see about those 12 kings? In chapter,
The 10 horns, or
Yes.
chapter 12, you mean?
yes, no, I'm sorry.
The 10
Chapter 17, verse 12.
Yeah, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as of yet. So that's
But yes,
but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast.
and then look at verse 13.
These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast.
So it's a transition.
Yes, we're seeing a transition. Yeah, well, then I just misunderstood you.
Because what I was saying was that you said 6, they come back, these 10 have a kingdom, but then the power to be king is given to the beast. I mean,
And that
given
is
to-
true, that
given
is
to-
true.
but
given-
the structure is like
But
Rome.
the structure is still a country. It's still a country, so I misunderstood you. Okay, all right, so,
Maybe I didn't say that correctly, but that's what I was thinking.
well,
It's
you
like
could
they-
blame me, you could say I misunderstood you, so. But let's see what potentially could happen. We don't know for sure, but potentially this could happen. Look at chapter 11, verse 7. The most difficult chapter, really, the controversial chapter of the book is chapter 11. But what do we see about the two witnesses in verse 7?
When they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them.
Okay, so what does that make you think of now that we've read chapter 13?
Christ.
So, and who's described there?
The beast.
The beast, and what happens to him?
He comes out of the bottomless pit.
He comes out of the bottomless pit or the abyss.
When he's
Now-
been given all the power from the 10.
Well, but what was the abyss? Chapter 9, Satan is given a key to the abyss. What is the abyss?
Where all the demons are.
Exactly, it's a holding place for demons. So how could the Antichrist be raised up from the abyss?
There's somebody unlocked it.
Huh? So that's tied to that. That's
He was
part
already
of
down there.
that.
He's a
But
demon.
but
What did she say? I didn't hear.
Go ahead.
He was fatally wounded.
Okay.
Okay, and when he comes back, what do we find out about him? He is what?
Angry.
He's angry. We do find that Satan's angry. We do find that out in chapter 12. But what do we find out when the Antichrist is? Let me see. What verse?
You're talking about him knowing he has a deadline? Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, that's true. But if we take the Antichrist and we tie him to the abyss, what's the message? Was he ever in the abyss? Are we ever told he was in the abyss?
No.
He's on the earth.
He's on the
Yeah.
earth. So he was not released ever from the abyss. We were never told that. But why does he tie him to the abyss?
Because he was.
he's evil.
He is so evil and he is demonically possessed, satanically possessed. And so there is some transition once he is raised or deception or whatever that he totally, and that's the tie there to the abyss. It wants to give us, because we know that Satan had the key to let those demons out of the abyss. They're functioning on the earth, and he wants us to tie that beast to that place. And that's the only way we could tie the beast to that place, is that these demons and Satan himself are possessing this person when they come back to life. Okay? Another thing that, what's the other verse? Verse 10. No, I don't want that verse. So, the other verse that I want is the ability that the two witnesses have. Let's look at,
6.
thank you.
These have the power to shut up
Yep.
the sky in order that rain may not fall during the days of their prophesying.
Okay, and then pick up verse 5 too. What is 5 and, so what do 5 and 6 say?
And if anyone desires to harm them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone would desire to harm them in this manner, he must be killed. These have the power to shut up the sky in order that rain may not fall during the days of their prophesying. And they have power over the waters to turn them into blood and to smite the earth with every plague as often as they desire.
Okay, and we know that they're functioning as witnesses for God on the earth for how long? We're told that at the beginning of the
3.5
chapter.
years.
3.5 years, that's right. And they have these supernatural enablements so that while they're communicating, what are we
They
told
can't
about?
be harmed.
Thank you, they cannot be harmed. In fact, if anybody tries to harm them,
They die.
Are
They
killed
die.
in the same manner. Whoever's trying to kill them, they're supposed to be killed in the same manner.
okay?
The Bible says.
Okay, so this is the safety and protection from God that they have while they're doing their ministry for that 3.5 years. They have supernatural enablements to protect themselves, and we find out that nobody can kill them. In fact, if somebody tries to kill them, they have the ability to kill them. Okay, and then on the heels of that, look at let's read verse 7 again.
And when they finish their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them.
Okay, so what is a potential possibility involved in those details? I don't know how to ask that.
Does that
There's
go
gonna
back
be
to what
an
you were
epic
just
battle.
talking about, him having the key? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, he does have the key, and we
But
do
he's
tie him
coming
to the
up out.
abyss, and he is coming up out of the abyss. So we certainly want to say he's demonically possessed, satanically energized by
And that's right.
everything that he does.
The opening of the pit energizes him, and that's where his power comes from, is from Satan and his demons.
That is exactly right, okay? But what happens to him?
You begin-
Well, these two are
He's-
killed.
He's mortally wounded. He is mortally wounded. Don't know,
Oh,
but it's possible that they, what?
wounded.
They were the ones that mortally
That they
wounded him.
might be the ones that wound him. And it's possible,
Oh, yeah.
huh?
I was thinking that.
It's
Makes
it's
sense.
possible, but we don't know that emphatically, and I'm not saying it's emphatic, but it is a possibility that they have something to do with this, which then would make kind of sense, because look at verse 13. After let's look at verse. Let's read 4. I have 8 on my paper, but let's just read the first, like 4 through 6.
On chapter 13?
Yes. Wait, no, look at the end of verse 3 before we read 4, okay? Look at the end of verse 3. What do we find at the end of verse 3?
The whole world was filled with wonder and awe of the beast.
Okay, so if the scenario that I just talked about, if that's what happens, how does that fit with what you just read?
So you're trying to say there's a possibility that there's this epic battle and they're fighting it out, and the two kill the one, but at the same time he ends up killing them before he dies. So then the two prophets are like left out in the street, but nobody cares about them because everybody's worried about the beast, and then he comes back and everybody's like, woohoo, you defeated it.
Close. Close. She should write a soap opera, right?
A little better.
Close.
Novella.
But what, so he dies,
The days of our lives.
he comes
Da-da-da.
back to life,
Oh, wait,
and what does he do when he comes back to life?
He kills the witnesses.
He kills the two witnesses that nobody could kill. And then everybody is totally amazed. Because
So he's wounded,
Mhm.
mortally wounded.
Yep.
And then he is healed and comes back, and
Yep.
then he kills the two prophets.
because their 3.5 years is over, and he kills
Somewhere
them.
in that 3.5 years, he's mortally wounded.
Yep.
Okay.
And we don't know, but it kind of makes a little bit of sense that they killed him. He is raised from the dead. Their 3.5 years of ministry is over. He kills them, and the whole world goes, because they're happy they're dead. Remember? What
Yeah,
did we
because they
find out?
couldn't get rid of
They
him.
were,
Yeah.
they were partying.
Exactly. It's the only time in Revelation people are happy, and they're
They made it a
happy
big
because they're
celebration like
Yes.
Christmas.
giving each other gifts, and all of a sudden, and then they're raised from the dead 3.5 days later. So we don't know emphatically, and I'm not telling you emphatically, but it's worth thinking about. It's worth considering that maybe that's some of the details or the dynamics that are in play during that time period. Okay?
And this could actually, what you were saying earlier, is this could actually be a kingdom, not a physical.
Well, and it could, yes, that's what some people think, that it's because Satan should not have the ability to raise a human being from the dead. So they want to totally make it a kingdom. I don't think one excludes the other, because that often you'll see the king and the kingdom used interchangeably.
Maybe they never were alive. They're just
True.
You know what I mean? It's a,
Yes.
they weren't born on the earth, and they're I don't know.
But also too,
Reanimated body.
there's something symbolic there with the abyss being open, cause it's been locked this whole
Yeah.
time, so there's power coming out that's that's been locked down this whole time.
Exactly, and it's certainly, God wants us to connect the fact that this guy is so evil, as Misty said, and so energized by the Satan, demons, whatever wicked control.
Because
And,
that's what that's what they're saying is the pit represents his purity, is the
yeah,
evil.
exactly, the evil
And
that
anything
came
that
out of
comes
it.
out of it is evil.
Yeah. And we talked about this too, the 7 heads being tied to both Satan and that those 7 heads are on the beast, that, you know, that there's been satanic influence on these governments throughout history. Okay, so now we want to read 5, is that right?
Verse 5.
Let's go 4, and we're in 13. Let's go 4 through 8, just to get that whole picture.
So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. To what verse did you say?
8.
Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world.
Okay, so how would you characterize this time frame? What defines what's going on during this time frame?
Everybody turns away from God.
Okay? Well, not everybody, but there's definitely,
Wouldn't this be toward the end of the 7 years?
he tells us. He
Yeah.
tells us exactly how long he's gonna do his thing.
42 months.
Yeah, 3.5 years. So it gives us a good idea of when that event is gonna take place, right? When is it gonna take place?
The last 3.5 years.
Exactly. And what else is gonna take place there, and we're gonna look at Daniel in just a minute, but what else is gonna take place at the same time? There's a lot of events taking place all at the same time, and what else is happening? Not Daniel 9:27. Remember, there's this is 3.5 years, this is 3.5 years, what is this?
Oh, Daniel 9.
The timeline.
It is a timeline, thank you, Jared.
No problem.
What happens right here?
He takes over the temple.
That's
when
what
he
it
breaks
is.
the covenant.
He stops
That's-
being nice.
That's when he
Jesus
stops
broke-
being nice, he
He
takes
breaks-
over the temple.
Breaks the covenant.
He
Yeah.
breaks the covenant, okay, Daniel 9:27 talks about a covenant, Revelation does not, but it talks about it, and he breaks that covenant when?
Then he shall conform
In the middle of
my
that 7.
covenant
Right.
with me for 1 week.
Yep.
In the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering.
Yep.
And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate even until the consummation which is determined is poured out onto the desolate.
What are you
This is when he
reading?
goes into the,
Daniel
Daniel
9:27.
9:27.
this is when he goes into the temple and demands to be worshipped.
Yep, and we'll read some of those verses, and we have read some of those verses, but we can see, well, that's 3.5 years. He's gonna do his thing for 3.5 years. We can see that the atmosphere during that time frame, he does what? What does he do?
Whatever you want.
What, yes, he does, whatever.
Let's just say hacks out.
Huh?
Lies, cheats, and steals.
Yeah, he does whatever he wants, but specifically what's described in those verses.
He ends sacrifice. and all
Okay,
that.
that's Daniel 9.
He wages war against.
Yep, so intense persecution is gonna be going on. What else does he say?
Blaspheme.
Yes, blasphemes. Hey, and what would he be thinking if he's blaspheming God? he's blaspheming people that are in heaven. He's blaspheming anybody and everything because, why would he be so bold?
Cause he has a lot of people following him.
He's got a lot of people following him and worshiping him. And why else?
He
He's
knows his
mad.
time is
The
getting
end is
short.
coming quick.
Okay, he's
Limited
mad.
time.
What?
He has limited time.
He has limited time.
His time's getting short.
He is so arrogant
Right.
about who he is
That's
and the
not-
control he has.
He still thinks he can lose.
And so, and again, he's satanically energized. And so he's just spewing.
Well, and at this point, God is not doing anything to limit that power.
That's a good
No.
point.
I mean, he
God's
does give
allowing
him
it.
some power, but
That's a good point.
he's not just, breaking loose, but he's pushing.
Yes, that's a good point. And we know that that's true by, there's a phrase that's used at least 3 times in the verses that you read. It's 1, 2, what is that phrase?
He was given authority?
He was given. He was given. He was given. So under the sovereignty of God, he is allowed to function this way for a period of time. So there's no respect for God, total contempt for God, total contempt for believers. So you've got this persecution environment. He just killed the 2 witnesses, potentially, to be careful, that he, but that's the atmosphere that he is in charge, and he is large and in charge. He thinks he's God, and we're told that in 2 Thessalonians, and we'll read that. Not this
Well,
week.
he's definitely taking advantage of the fact that the people that are in his camp, so to speak, don't know what the prophecies say necessarily. They don't know what is coming. They're believing in him.
Yeah, and
So-
that
The
it
people on
really
earth
They're
is.
totally
right.
deceived.
Yes,
Exactly.
and that he's their savior.
They
and-
have this arrogance that he's
Yes,
in charge and they're believing him.
yes, exactly. And there's some verses along with that we're not going to look at tonight, but we'll go pick those up at some point in time. How about let's read Revelation 12, and then we're going to jump to Daniel and do what we can with that spreadsheet. Revelation chapter 12. And you guys have mentioned it in different ways throughout our discussion, but let's look at 7 through 9. What do we find out happens?
12, 7 through 9.
And
Yeah.
there was war in heaven. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Okay, and look at the end of verse 12, and Elaine, you said that. What does the end of verse 12 tell us about his time?
And for this reason rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you having great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time.
Okay, and then what does he do with his short time? Look at verse 13, and then let's go down to 17. What does he do with his short time?
Persecuted the woman and who gave birth to the man-child.
Okay, and the woman is
Israel.
Israel. Okay, and then look down at 17. So he chases her into the wilderness, but he can't get her. So then look at what he does after in verse 17.
Went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, and her offspring who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus.
Okay, so we've got some believers, some converted Jews that did not flee. And he's going back to go after them. He's going back to go after them. And how would that fit the events that are taking place? How would that fit? He's got a short time. Let's see. Verse 6 tells us how much his short time is. What do we have at the end of verse 6?
time and half the time.
Yeah, 3.5 years. And when Revelation talks about all these events that take place, other than the white horse, the time is only in the second half of the tribulation. Or, as some people say, the tribulation really is those last 3.5 years. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so let's jump to Daniel. I'm not going to write anything on the board because there's and we read some of these things in Daniel last week. What I want you to see, big picture, is this spreadsheet. And if you want to look at Daniel more on your own, this might be a helpful guide. But you can see, and we went over last week, that these are the 4 kingdoms that the book of Daniel refers to. And so if you look at the big picture, you can see Daniel 2, I'm on the first page, okay? You can see Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, and chapter 11. You can see that those interpret each other. So the Bible interprets itself. And you can see that, okay? And so looking across, we can see that. But I want you to see that chapter 11, the reason that people criticize the book of Daniel as being history, or as being history and not prophecy, is because of chapter 11. And you can see the verses that are in italics. That's quoting chapter 11. Then you can see history and a particular ruler that's citing, and some details about that ruler that's being cited. This covers about 400 years of history in this chapter. It's fascinating how, and so you're in that chapter 11 column, you'll see the Bible verse, you'll see it applied to history, and some of the details that fit that history, okay? So if you want to sit down with your Bible and read through that, it's pretty fascinating. Like I said, it takes place over 400 years, okay? We went over, so I want to skip the first page, but I want to go, not the second page. I want to go to the third page. Do you see Daniel 8? There's some details there from chapter 8 of Daniel. And so that relates to Daniel chapter 11, verse 21. And would somebody read Daniel 11, verse 21?
Daniel 11:21.
Correct.
He will be succeeded by a contemptible person who has not been given the honor of royalty. He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure, and he will seize it through intrigue.
Okay, and that is describing, and again, my suggestion is that you would actually sit down and read through this, but it's actually describing a historical figure, which Daniel 8 is also referring to that same historical figure, and that historical figure's name is Antiochus Epiphanes. And I believe we talked about that a little bit last week, so now you have the references, and you've got the details in here about how he takes the throne, okay? But the reason Antiochus Epiphanes is highlighted as a Grecian ruler is what? Does anybody know? Do you remember?
He was completely evil.
He was completely evil, and what did he do?
He seized the throne while their heir was being held hostage in Rome.
Okay, that is true, but do you know what else he did? I'm trying to look for
He
the verse.
destroyed the temple.
Yeah, what verse is that? Oh, I think it's 29. Okay, 31. So you can see let's read Daniel 11:31. Would somebody read that verse?
His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation.
So there's a historical person that did what he's gonna do in the future, which is why so much of this is highlighted, is because he looks like, but not as bad, the future Antichrist. And you can see 8:11 also, if you go across that column, if you're looking at that spreadsheet, what do you see in 8:11? What does he do? Uh-huh.
Does away with the regular sacrifice.
Yep, so 8 says it, and it does away with the regular sacrifice. What else does it say he does?
Magnifies itself to the commander of the host.
Okay, and what does he do?
Remove the regular sacrifice from him.
He is a historical person, sounds like the details of what the Antichrist will do in the future. And so we have this historical person that did that, and some of the details there on 31 is that he was mad, he got defeated. And remember, every time you see this, the chapter 11, you see this fighting between the king of the north and the king of the south, they go through Israel. And Israel changes hands. And so that's part of why, remember we talked about prophecy affects, or talks about the nation of Israel and nations that have an effect on Israel. So that's what, he gets defeated, he's mad, he goes back through Jerusalem, and he goes into the temple, and this is what he placed guards around the temple, mandated idol worship, abolished Jewish religious practices, carried away the temple vessels, stopped the sacrifices. Those who remained faithful to Judaism were mutilated, strangled, took circumcised babies, hung them around, killed them, put them on their mom's necks. A statue of Zeus was placed in the temple. So, and he sacrificed a pig on the altar. So history.
And made the priest eat it.
Yeah, that's right, he did. Okay, so that's history. But he sounds like what this guy is gonna do in the future. And you can see that he talks about it in chapter 8, you can see that he talks about it in chapter 11. And this is where we were, if you go down on that page, this is where we were last week. Because we looked at chapter 2, and we looked at verse 40, and in chapter 2, and in chapter 7, we saw a breakdown of kingdoms. What was the breakdown that we saw? Not the names, but what was the breakdown? It was specific, there were descriptions. What was the breakdown?
Of the toes, or?
That's where, that is
They're
specific.
representing the toes, but what you mean the specific kingdom breaking down?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
The head, the chest.
Yes, and we did it, yeah, exactly. But he also is clear to say the first kingdom, the second kingdom, and then gives a description. The third kingdom, and then gives a description. The fourth kingdom, and gives a description. And on the fourth kingdom, which is why we talk about a revived Rome, we find in the statue, what do we find? That he zeroes in on the statue. The feet and the toes, 10 toes. I think everybody here probably has 10 toes. And then when we looked at chapter 7, we saw that Daniel was zeroed in on what? This is your chance, Ed.
The mouthy horn.
The mouthy horn. He was zeroed in on the mouthy horn. There's no question. And Ed, look at the spreadsheet. Look how it's characterized. You are immortal, Ed. Look at the spreadsheet. So look at Daniel 7, 7 and 8. The revived Rome, 10 horns, and who?
Oh, is that what
Mouthy
that
horn.
Is that what
That's
mouthy
exactly
horn?
right.
The mouthy horn.
Exactly. And it took me a second, and when I looked at this the other day, it's like, why did we put that? And it's the mouthy horn. You're welcome, Ed. And
Mouthy
that's-
Horn was telling Wendy's.
Yeah, and that's, okay.
Look at his face.
I get emotional.
Yeah. So, and you're also, in verse 723, the mouthy horn is referenced there, just so you know what that MH is, okay? But we can see, if you go back to the page before, we can see the feet and the toes in 240. We can see the 10 horns in Daniel 7, 7 and 8. We can see that Daniel 9:27, he makes a covenant, a 7-year covenant. And these events are taking place during the same time period. And all the way up to, in chapter 11, all the way up to chapter 35, you can find in history how that matched Antiochus Epiphanes. From 36 on, there is no historical fulfillment for the events described from 36 on. Which again shows Rome and Rome coming back. That is consistent in 2, 7, and 11. Let me see what else I want to do. Oh, okay. Then you can see some of the characters. So if you go to the spreadsheet, it is the last page. You can see Daniel 7:23. We have a revived Rome with the mouthy horn. And if we would read verse 23, we would find out that he does what? What time frame is he functioning in?
3 years, 3.5 years.
Yep. And what kind of power does he have? What's the description there on the spreadsheet?
It was all the time, long time.
Yeah, alter time, law, it continues to reinforce that this person is a powerful person. And then in verse 8, okay, so chapter 8 is described Antiochus Epiphanes coming through the Grecian Empire as it was broken out, okay? Alexander the Great did not have an heir. He had, so his four generals inherited his kingdom. And then you see it zeroes in in chapter 11 on 2 of the heirs of those generals, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. Is that right? So is that right? Am I saying it right?
Sounds good.
Seleucus.
Yes,
Seleucus?
yes. Okay. So, but it focuses on those 2 kingdoms, and again, because they're going to fight back and forth, and they're going to conquer and possess Israel, or they're tromping through their land to fight each other. Every time they fight, they're tromping through Israel to fight each other. Okay? But let's look at Daniel 8, 17 and 19. You can either read it from the paper, or you can read it from the book, whichever you prefer.
As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified.
Okay, where are you?
That was Daniel.
8:17.
That is?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. And fell prostrate. Son of man, he said to me, understand that the vision concerns the time of the end.
Okay, and then look at 19.
He said, I'm going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end.
Okay, so he's this whole chapter, and again, Antiochus Epiphanes is talked about from verse 21 or 22 until verse 36. So we have quite a chunk of that chapter about that person, because he is a foreshadow of a future world leader. Okay? And he's saying that, right, in those verses. What is he saying in those verses for us as we read it? What is he trying to get us to do while we're reading it? In 17 and 19. What is he trying to get us to do?
To realize that it's future and it's not right then.
Yes, but what time does he draw in there?
The end.
Yeah, he
Avoid
says,
time.
this pertains to the end. So like Antiochus Epiphanes was in like 162 or 163 BC-ish. Okay, it is in your paper if I'm not quoting it right. But that's the kind of the time frame of when he was alive. But he finished the chapter by saying, what does he say? I want you to know, I'm going to let you know what will occur at the final period of indignation. He wants us to project this guy into the future because it's the final period of indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end. Okay, so anyway, those are things that I wanted to point out to you. We're not gonna read like all of the verses from 36 to, but I want to look at two verses. Look at 11:36, and this is again, we don't find any historical fulfillment. We can take, we have the benefit of history.
Daniel.
We can, yes, Daniel 11. We can read and go, okay, that happened in history. And so we have the benefit of matching history to what Daniel wrote down, what Daniel was given. But if you look at Daniel 11:36, what do we find about, again, this is looking into the future, Antichrist. What do we find out about him in 11:36?
Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done.
Okay, and then look at verse 45. Where will he be?
And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him.
And Daniel has already told us in chapter 2 and in chapter 7 what is that end that he's going to come to. What is that end that he's going to come to? So let's look at chapter 2 and we'll finish with this, okay? Let's look at chapter 2. How about 45 maybe? I'm looking.
44 through 45.
Maybe 44 and 45, yeah, and that's at the bottom of that chart. Okay, so look at 2:44 and 45, and what do we see there?
In the days of those kings, the God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and this kingdom will not be left to another people. It will crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, but will itself endure forever. You saw a stone break off from the mountain without a hand touching it, and it crushed the iron, bronze, fire, clay, silver, and gold. The great God has told the king what will happen in the future. The dream is certain, and it is interpretable. Interpretation is reliable.
Okay, so he says, in the days of those kings, and what are the kings that he's referring to?
The kings of the
10 kings.
of the
In
toes.
the days of those 10 kings, the God of heaven is going to take out that kingdom and set up his kingdom that's eternal. Okay, so he says that in chapter 2. You look at verse 7, chapter 7, excuse me, and let's look at, we're going to look at 26 and 27. We won't read all of that. But those verses also say this, so look at Daniel 7, 26 and 27. Let's add 25, I'm sorry.
He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and destroy it forever. Then, through 27.
Yes, please.
Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions shall serve and obey him.
So that's a consistent message throughout, and if we would, we will remind ourselves as we go into the future. But what brings him, what marks that 3.5 years? What brings an end to his 3.5 year reign? We read it in 2, we read it in 7. We didn't read it yet in Revelation, but what brings an end to his 3.5 year reign?
Christ
The
returns.
second coming of Jesus. So we know from the time that covenant, he breaks that covenant, until that point in time, that is the return of Jesus Christ, and he is the one that ends his earthly reign.
When it says, then the saints shall be given into his hand, is he talking about the Israelites? That the 144,000 or what?
Not the 144,000, because when we read about the 144,000, they are sealed
Okay,
in chapter 7, and we're told that they, in chapter 14, that they actually are there when Jesus comes back. Chapter 14 is going to jump ahead and have some of those details. That's what's hard about the book, is because it doesn't always follow a I'm so chronological.
linear.
Huh?
It's not
It's
linear.
not.
No, and it's hard.
it's hopscotch.
Yeah, but we do
It's wrong.
find when he talks about Jesus coming back, he comes back, and how many of them are on the earth? All 144,000. So, but to answer your question, there are people, Jews and Gentiles, that become believers
During this time.
time frame, and we know he's putting them in a group.
Because they've endured the tribulation and
They kept their faith.
they kept their faith.
Well, and a lot of them will be martyred.
Right.
A lot of them will be martyred, and they're under intense persecution. And we're going to look at one more part of that persecution next week, because we'll look at the second piece.
That's why it's better to become
Yes.
saved underneath grace instead of underneath judgment.
Right.
Absolutely, Dan, but the other piece is,
That God's grace is still there for them.
Yeah.
and true, but I don't trust myself.
Right.
And I am flawed. And I am a sinner. And I, even as a forgiven sinner, I don't trust myself. And when I do, I fail. And it's so clear. And so the point is, we were intended to be in fellowship with God. And we're intended to relate to him as we go through life. And that's the most important thing.
Well,
in living.
when God has made such a big deal about giving these visions of prophecy way back then.
Yep.
And then even to, apostles and stuff, it's gonna be bad.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
They can't even comprehend it, and some of those were martyred for their faith.
Absolutely. And we're kind of shocked that more people have been martyred for their faith in the 20th century than before that. But we kind of don't think, because it hasn't touched us to the level that some of the other countries have experienced that.
Christians are being killed in Africa.
Oh, horrible.
Oh, yeah,
Horrible.
right now.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else?
Just look at Charlie.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Charlie Kirk. That's a really
Sucks.
good example, yes. Let's close. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for just teaching us, and the fact that you want us to know some things about the future, even if we can't figure out all the details. There are a lot of details that we can figure out, but you want us to know that you are moving history to a point in time where all that we know, whether it's through our own death, or whether it's through a rapture, or whether it's through the end, that you are working all of these things after your plan. And Father, we can get caught up in our day-to-day things and lose sight of you. And I just pray that we would be just very conscious of your presence, and thank you for your presence, and our need for you, and our need to grow in fellowship and relationship with you, but also to become more like you in our lives. Thank you for each person that's here. Thank you for those who are not here tonight. We just bring before you all the needs, and there are many in our group, and we just thank you that you are working in each situation as only you can. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.